most people think.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of What Most People Think in the week of the big old Gorton and Denton by-election. Have you got the beers in? Are you doing an all-nighter? Are you pulling a Jimmy Whiter, staying up? You got the lads round? You got your watch party sorted? It's good. It's a huge by-election, really. It could shape the next bit of whatever this parliament is. And to discuss it with me, we've got What Most People Think debutant, which is, we haven't had one of those for a while. We've got Milo Edwards. Welcome to the show, mate.
I, for one, am sick of the Gorton and Denton bubble that has a death grip on British political discourse. Gorton and Denton-centric news cycles. That's what people have been talking about for years.
It is weird in politics that every once in a while a place just becomes the focal point of everything. It's a bit like Workington Man. You know, when they get an election coming round and they decide that a certain kind of person is going to decide it. Suddenly these trumped up so-and-sos, I've never used that phrase, from Gorton and Denton parading round thinking they're the kingmakers. Yeah, it'll all be over by Friday, lads, right? But
brief moment in the sun for them.
Well, I mean, it's good to have you on because we hadn't really worked together at all, I don't think. And then you came on a Times radio show.
Yes.
And I don't know if you remember, but I was a bit nervous because I don't know this guy's vibe. I watched one of your clips and it was quite rude. And I was thinking, this guy could say anything. But, you kept it Ofcom friendly then. But obviously we have a bit more freedom on the podcast.
I'm context dependent, so I'll be led by you on the level of rudeness.
Just go for it. I mean, the only thing is I do not know at all. And I don't know. Like, how old are you?
I am 33. It was my birthday yesterday.
Oh, well, first up, happy birthday. But I don't know your politics. I would, instinctively, you're going to go a bit left-wing. That's the presumption, bit left-wing, a bit woke. But there's a hunch that I've got that you might be both those things, but also find woke people irritating as well. How close am I?
Well, I think as someone who's broadly on the left, I also am annoyed by other people on the left on a daily basis because I think that's an integral part of it. Yeah.
Well, because the thing about people on the left is you've all been told off by people on the left. That, that's quite funny. That's increasingly happening on the right now as well, though. There's this ideological purity thing. I don't know if you saw this. It was, but there was a post that went viral and there was a lady. And I think, and I'm not just climbing into the Restore Britain thing every week, but she did have that in her biography. And what it was there was a guy whose dog had shat somewhere.
Brilliant start.
Good, right? So you think, where would this go? This is right. That is the sign of Britain's broken, right? Just dogs shitting everywhere and people not picking it up. And there was a guy that came there. I'd say he had sort of West African heritage. He was wearing a kind of like official, like work for a company, and he was issuing a fine because the person didn't have a poo bag with them. And it had been shared as in, why are these foreign people issuing fines? And it was kind of like pro letting your dog shit everywhere. But because obviously this person, I think, had got annoyed because he was of sort of like foreign descent. And I sort of thought, if you were really going up against Britain, I think not wanting dog shit everywhere is one thing that unites us, right? That's
Restore
a weird
Britain to when there was dog shit everywhere.
Yeah,
this is a big issue on the doorstep in Gorton and Denton, in that there will be dogs shitting on your doorstep.
So yeah, look, I think ideological purity is a problem everywhere.
Yeah.
But on this podcast, we get together, we disagree agreeably, or however it goes, really.
Well, I'm glad to see the right are suffering the kind of factionalism that we've been suffering for years. Good to see that spreading. What I will say about that video, though, it's really interesting how when you look at like a right-wing propaganda thing like that, if the video had been the other way around, it would also be being shared by the same people. Like if it was a West African guy letting his dog shit on the pavement and a white British person finding him, they'd also be like, look at these people coming over here and letting their dog shit everywhere. It's like this perfect system where like whatever happens, it can be used to make some kind of right-wing ethno-nationalist point. Yeah,
no, it's definitely, I think we're now almost reaching equality on both sides. And, in a way, that's a very left-wing thing. The right are being every bit as ideologically deluded as the left. We're also going to talk about, we talk about like woke stuff. There was this very interesting thing at the Baftas on Sunday night where there was a Tourette's activist who was shouting out words throughout the ceremony and then shouted out the N-word while there were two black men on stage, which has really kind of posed like a really difficult point for progressive politics, on the one hand about inclusion, but on the one hand, if there's something that terrifies the left more than anything, it's racism, and above all else, being racist against black people. So there's kind of all those things met in a weird crossroads of wokeism. And then in the Patron only, as Milo is making his debut here, I thought it would be good to get him to do a death story to kind of, to kind of win his spurs with what most people think faithful. So, piss take prices. So I know that you've got one, Milo. There was one that came to me shortly before going on air. Beans on toast. Right. Beans on toast at somewhere called Bold Street that does a breakfast. Now, I mean, what do you think? I mean, obviously this is going to be expensive, so you're going to guess high. But even an expensive price for beans on toast, what are you thinking?
I'm glad to see that you haven't lost touch with your roots with all this success, Jeff. Still going out for a beans on toast.
Well, this wasn't me.
Oh, okay.
This wasn't me. This was sent in to me. So, if you want to send in anything, either email whatmostpeoplethinkuk@gmail.com or use the hashtag #pisstakeprices. So this is people keeping a look at. I've sort of become like the Gammony Martin Lewis, right? And
restore Britain to proper beans on toast.
Or just proper prices. I mean, just look at Greg's and think, can we compete with them? That should be every business model. But What do you think? Beans on toast at a pub, what are you thinking would be even a steep price?
12 quid.
12. Well, see, I've probably laid out £10.75 for beans on toast. Now
that is too much when you think about how much a tin of beans is.
How much a tin of beans is? But I don't know what you could possibly say. I mean, sometimes they'll fluff the words, won't they? And they'll say kind of whole grain poppy seed fucking bread that was kneaded by the ghosts of children from Yorkshire in the 18th century. But £10.75 is a piss take. And the other thing I'm finding with piss take prices is that when I put them up online, I now get people getting annoyed because if I'm saying, like, for example, last week, I mentioned the fact that there was a driving instructor charging £55 an hour. And then obviously this, falls into the slipstream of various driving instructors and people. But what bothers me is how patronising people are. People go, you are aware that he doesn't keep all that money. There's tax, there's overheads. You go, oh, that's an interesting concept. What people earn isn't the same as what people keep. Do you mean like some sort of taxation system?
As though that isn't the case for everyone, yeah.
Yeah, like every single person that earns anything, right, unless it's stand-up selling merch after the gig, you do pay some sort of tax on that.
Cash in hand merch stand at a Jeff Norcott gig.
No, I declare everything. You will know, Milo, working in stand-up, the comedians, the biggest hypocrites ever, so left-wing, but do you think any of them... I mean, look at the Free Fringe, for example, right? How much of that, all that money in buckets, do you think gets declared?
Well, yeah, how much of it gets declared to PBH? The big question. For his
so the people that organise the Free Fringe, none of it is getting declared. Comedians they present left, but economically, they're sort of Thatcher's little wet dream, aren't they?
Yeah, well, to be fair to comedians, I think a lot of them don't earn enough to pay tax. So it's sort of moot.
All right, I'll tell you point at one point, but I've heard stories of the Free Fringe of certain acts earning 12 grand. And I just have reservations as to how much of that is seen by good old Rachel Reeves, for her to spend wisely. Do you have a piss take price?
I do. I was in Ireland on tour last week, and I had to. I was staying at a hotel in Dublin, and they had a car park that they recommend that like you get a slight discount if you're with the hotel. And I had a hire car, so I had to park my car for 24 hours in Dublin. It was €48.
Whoa!
For your listeners, that's nearly 5 slices of beans on toast.
You got to say it like a Dubliner as well. You can't pluralise euro. It's 48 euro. 48 fucking euro. Jesus Christ. 48 euros. Where were you parked? Did they give it a service while you were there as well?
I wish they had. It was like, I mean, I really like Ireland, but I do find that Dublin especially, it feels like London with the kind of ridiculousness turned up a bit, where sort of like the prices are even more mental, and you're like, why?
Can I say as well about Dublin? It's a thing that doesn't get discussed much. People, unbelievable. Atmosphere in pubs, amazing. Just absolutely, such a cool place to be. Aesthetically, can we talk about that? Just as a city to look at, it's not, I'm going to get so much shit for this. I would say that the beauty of the people is not matched by the city as a physical thing to look at.
Yeah, I feel like actually I've not explored it a great deal because I tend to turn up, do a show, and then leave immediately. But it's not.
This might be the other problem I've had is that I go from the airport to a Premier Inn and then I walk to the Laughter Lounge and I walk back again. So I am very much hugging the banks of the Liffey. Maybe I need to get out into the Shires there.
Go out and get a slice of beans on toast, Jeff. Come on, explore the culture.
Yeah, a slice of beans on toast on sourdough bread, which was kneaded on the tears of oppression. €15. New patrons. So the accent was still going there. That was weird. New patrons. If you are a patron, you get the podcast early, ad-free, and with bonus content. Please go to the website, Patreon, or through Android devices. Apple Podcasts, they take quite a hefty slice, but you can always do it that way as well. We got 2 this week. We got Ben. So when it's a one namer, Milo, we presume that they're working in a woke institution. They can't be exposed as a liking an edgelord like me. So I reckon Ben works for Bafta. Very difficult morning for Ben. Never expected. They probably were just thinking, but we're woke. That we're fully that. It's almost like the N-word slur thing at the Baftas was scientifically designed to be as excruciatingly difficult for anybody with progressive politics, which I suppose we'll discuss later. Ben, thanks very much for joining the Patreon. And we've also got somebody who calls themselves Nomad.
Listens to a different podcast every week, this guy.
Exactly. Yeah. I just realised he was a Patreon for one single week of his life. Well, I'll double check if he's still there next week. The main talking point, our super patron David Domain keeps an eye on previous week's episodes, and we sort of tease out themes from that. And I was giving Francis Foster shit for learning to drive in an automatic vehicle, saying it was essentially sort of feminine behaviour by him.
Of all the things I've heard Francis Foster given shit for, that was a left field one.
Yeah. Well, he's been on trigonometry of Netanyahu. I think learning to drive in an automatic is worse.
Say what you like about Netanyahu, he can drive a manual.
He can drive a bloody Meg and drive the bloody shit out of a manual. David says, in your defence, there are several advantages of driving manual vehicles for petrol or diesel. The transmission is more reliable, requires less maintenance too, safer to drive in snowy, icy, muddy conditions. Yep, more control, less brake wear. If driven smoothly, especially with knowledge of the engine's BSFC charts, this is now way blokey beyond my level, manuals will give better fuel efficiency. So, you are younger, a bit woker, Milo. Is driving manuals more masculine?
I do definitely share your slight disdain for people who learn to drive on an automatic. So I do think it's a cop-out, especially in this country.
Should I not be bringing it down to male or female then? Is that the problem?
I feel like in this country, pretty much everyone learns to drive on a manual. It's just kind of normal. And then anyone who doesn't learn to drive on a manual is immediately in this sort of like weird category. Because I also think, this isn't really very funny, but it's just kind of what I think. The difficult part about learning to drive is not like doing the gears. And I think it's like you're setting yourself up for failure by immediately admitting, like, I'm so bad at this that I can't do the easy bit. And I feel the same way about people who, after they pass their test, they put the P plates on their car.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, you should just give up at that point. Like, you should. If someone drives like shit and they've got the P plate on their car, I actually have less sympathy for them than if the P plate wasn't there. Because I'm like, you're sort of doing the like, yeah, I will be driving like shit, but I've actually got I've got a note from my doctor saying that I can't drive. And I'm like, no, fuck off, learn to drive.
That's a really good point. I think driving with a P plate on, you shouldn't be advertising it. It's almost like, you remember when you go into school with new trainers, and if you tell people that they're new trainers, people go, I wish to stamp on them, is what I want to do. If I see somebody with a green P plate on, I want to literally give them the odd nudge, like we're on a sort of live action bumper cars, like fully grown bumper cars. Absolutely. You've made a really good point there. Can I just confess something here that I just genuinely didn't realise till now? I gave Francis shit the whole episode. I currently drive an automatic, but it was just because it happened. The car that I want anyway. Now I realise what a hypocrite. But I can drive a fucking stick shift, he said, trying to reassert his masculinity. I learned that way. I've earned the fucking right to drive an automatic.
Well, I think driving an automatic, when you've learned to drive a manual, it's a bit like doing abstract art if you've learned to draw. You've got to earn your stripes first, and then you can. I also currently drive an automatic, but I have driven manuals for years, so I've got my years of credit in the bank for that.
Yeah, I mean, you got manly points for learning to drive on a manual. You lose a few for the abstract art reference. I'll be honest. You know what I mean?
I think I've been losing manly points my whole career, Jeff. So I'll take that on the chin.
We were talking about AI, and David just makes a point here, about the fears of what it's going to do to our workforce, our culture, our psyches. David says that AI is scary until you pull the plug or the batteries out. I suppose the fear with AI is that maybe I've seen too many films that it will go override. And obviously, because I've seen films, it will announce override in a way that maybe it wouldn't in real life, because obviously films need exposition. That's the point, is surely if something becomes intelligent enough, it would not allow itself to die.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is all marketing though, really. Like these AI companies are always going, oh wow, our AI is so smart, it's scary, like it might actually be a danger to human civilization. Then it's like, well, why are you still making it then? Like, none of them really think this. It's just they think if they say this, like the investors will be like, wow, this stuff's really good. When in reality, what it's doing is like helping boomers make memes of like, a crying child trying to wake up a British lion. Like, please, there's a West African man finding people for dog poo. You must wake up.
Yeah, God, that was one of the weirder things I've seen this year. I think you make a good point, but it's also quite bleak in a way, is that the way that investors get excited is the more dystopian you make it. It's almost like a drug dealer. Like I remember I heard one year in Ibiza, and this is pretty bleak, but they were saying that this pill was so strong that a couple of people had fucking died, and the demand for those pills went up immediately because people were going, God, they must be good. So yeah, that I think you make
people just want to end it all when they're in Ibiza.
Yeah. Or they certainly want to flirt with that.
What most people think.
All right, the thank you and the fuck you. Again, I know it's going to sound like I'm making this up, but the audiences at tour shows, it's ridiculous. Like Bedford last night, I don't know if they'd all like just done sort of microdosed on magic mushrooms, but the atmosphere was amazing. I was in Derby, as I already said that in the breaking news episode. Where was I? On Saturday night, Wellingborough as well. It's just insane, this tour. I really genuinely, Milo, when you sort of think, it's just really genuinely unrealistic that the next tour show will be as well received as this. I've just been doing this long enough to know, so I do say get in now, ignore the next tour, and definitely don't clip this up and play it back to me when I'm marketing it. But this week I'm going to be Wednesday. I am in Cheltenham. There's a few tickets left for that. Then Thursday, where the fuck am I? Thursday, High Wycombe. I think there's about 7 left for that. Saturday is third day in Maidenhead. That's sold out. Unlucky. And then Sunday, Leamington Spa. There's a few left for that, but it's a big room. I think we're already at the 450 mark, but there's room for a few more, and then there's dates right up until May on Live Nation. Are you touring, Milo? You were out and about doing?
I've got a few bits on the go. I'm in Australia all of April. If you've got any listeners down there, but actually, actually.
Oh yeah, 1.4% of the listenership.
Oh, lovely stuff. Yeah, well, I'm doing
1.4 people.
Throughout April, I'm doing all the major cities in Australia. So if you're in one of the major cities, then I will be coming to you. And when is this coming out?
Tomorrow, so it'll be Tuesday morning. I don't fucking see these left-wing comics, Milo. They'll do a podcast and then they'll go, yeah, I'll just sit and fuck it. What are they playing at? They'll just sit and wait, and then they go 7 months later. You no longer think those things, and they put it out. This is a right-wing podcast, Milo. It goes out the following fucking day, mate.
So this week on Wednesday, I'm doing I've got this format that I do, which is kind of like a crowd work show, but it's called Time for Questions. It's like a piss take of question time, where it's me and some comedians pretending to be a panel of politicians. Nice. And then we ask the audience questions, and it's very silly and stupid.
Okay, well, look, and also, if you could do me a favour, if you do either go to see Milo in Australia or Time for Questions, is say, I heard you on What Most People Think, because then what happens is, right, Milo would then say that to other comics, and go, oh, so he does have a listenership, and that way I'll get guests. The fuck you is to Alistair Campbell, who, responding to Boris Johnson being interviewed as we come up for the awful 4th anniversary of the Ukraine war. I don't think the word anniversary should be used for stuff like that. It's kind of weird, isn't it, when they say that?
Yeah, no one's getting flowers and a card for the Ukraine war anniversary. Oh, you shouldn't have.
You shouldn't. Yeah, you literally, Vladimir. You shouldn't have.
Yeah.
Boris Johnson was interviewed, and which I don't think is unreasonable. He was fucking prime minister when it happened, and he'd also been quite pro-Ukraine. It was really weird because he sort of got accused of being like, remember at first it was all like, oh, he's in Russian money, he's dripping with Russian money, but it was also like literally trying to get us with boots on the ground troops in. So if he was in the thrall of Russian money, I think they could probably demand a refund.
Yeah, I'd have said Boris Johnson's probably got enough trouble remembering all the anniversaries anyway.
He probably has. God, how many kids? Did we ever find that out? Maybe I don't want to know. It's nice to stay mythical.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an interesting example of how things. When you talk about what most people think, right? This podcast is about how general, like actual people respond to things. I think for a politician to be virile and potent is never a bad thing. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if that ever did him a single bit of harm, other than topical comedians like having great fun with it. Have you ever seen the film Campaign with Will Ferrell in?
No.
It's really, if you like your politics, it's really funny because there's a scandal where so there's two guys going for this political role, and Will Ferrell's character sleeps with the other guy's wife, and it's like a scandal, like, well, we're going to put this out there and this will finish your campaign. But everyone's like, what a fucking guy. And then it becomes like a sort of arms race of them both trying to sleep with each other's wives. It's a good film.
Well, I actually have a thing about Boris Johnson where I'm like, I'm no supporter of Boris Johnson's politics, but I have this theory that he is actually the most relatable prime minister we've had in a long time. Because about a few months ago, I saw a video someone posted online of they'd taken it on like the M1 or something, and it's through their car window, and it's Boris Johnson driving a clapped out M-Reg Toyota Previa with like loads of kids in the back and just looking like he's having the worst day of his life. And I'm like, somehow, despite being basically an aristocrat, he is the most close to the average British man's soul. Like, that man's life is suffering. Like, you can't imagine Keir Starmer doing that. Like, and so it's sort of in a bizarre sort of way, there is kind of Boris Johnson was like the truest representative of the people of this country.
I think it's a really good point. Also, that was why I objected to the attacks on Angela Rayner for vaping in the dinghy. I was like, that's just a normal person thing. They picked an activity on holiday. You know the photo I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, what else are you going to do in a dinghy?
Yeah, she fucking hating every minute of it and was bored and thought, right, I'll just vape this kind of terrible experience away. So I sometimes think that like the online political space, they go for things like, oh, Boris has got loads of kids. Angela Rayner, she looks like she's down a bingo hall. That is exactly why they're popular.
Yeah, exactly.
So Boris Johnson, he got interviewed by Lauren Kuenssberg for the 4th anniversary of the Ukraine invasion. And Alistair Campbell, this guy doesn't fucking get it. He just doesn't get it. He does a post saying, oh, Boris Johnson, is he still a thing? Or words to that effect. I was like, you're Alistair Campbell. Do you know how bizarre it is?
A man whose political career ended much longer ago and in much more disgrace, arguably.
Yeah, right. Like the guy that kind of such a sex up a thing to start a war that might not have needed to happen versus the guy that kind of like started arming, and was quite prescient. Maybe one of the best things he did was to be very pro-Ukraine from the start. I mean, I haven't said it for a while, but the only explanation for Alistair Campbell is that he's forgotten he was Alistair Campbell. Nothing else makes any fucking sense. Okay, let's get into, genuinely local politics, and let's talk about the Gorton and Denton by-election. Right, so it's coming up on Thursday, so hopefully we'll have a result on Friday morning. I mean, I'm a political nerd, so there's a chance I might stay up for this one, Milo. Is that a mental thing to do?
Ooh, I don't know. I mean, I won't be doing it. I guess it depends on how much, how invested you are in this. I feel like I'm increasingly actually detached from politics in the UK because it feels like it's all going to shit anyway. So I'm like...
It is definitely going to shit, but that's why I'm attached to it. I'm just... The tea, as the kids say. I love the tea. I love the gossip.
You can't resist.
I can't resist it. Nigel Farage this week. So, Reformer trying to up their profile. Nigel Farage, did you see this thing he did where he went to the Chagos Islands?
Yes, I did see this.
Well, he and a number of other right-wingers have been sort of trying to lobby Trump, which is partly why Trump came back out against the Chagos Islands despite having flip-flops. And so Farage's point was... He went there, but he'd been blocked from going there. Oh, I've gone to the Chagos Islands. It's another thing of like, this country's finished.
They've not let me into the proper British territory of the Chagos Islands.
Yeah, right. And then it kind of like wisely, I think it was the former Defence Secretary, Ben Wallace, who then said, yeah, because it's like a military base and you just can't rock up at military bases and demand. Now, I think
they
he
won't
might
let
have
me
been
drop
like,
dog shit on the Chagos Islands. What's happened to this country?
I was asked to pick up my dog shit. And I just saw with Nigel, I was like, what are you doing? You know, this desire that he has to be in the news. Even while like Labour were on the verge of total implosion, Nigel was still agitating to be in the news. And if Labour proved one thing is that you can actually win power by doing nothing or by doing less. So I find it a little bit odd that he's so fucking busy. Do you know what I mean? And the polling has been interesting, really. In Gorton and Denton, it seems very close. And it's very close between Reform and the Green Party, right? I mean, you think about the week Labour could have had. If they had selected Andy Burnham, yes, there might have been an existential crisis for leadership, but this would be a slam dunk. Right? But is it too simplistic to think that Burnham definitely would have won?
It probably is, yeah, but I do agree with you that I feel like the Labour Party, from like leaving aside whether the Labour Party are any good, whether you should support the Labour Party, whatever, but like they are, from a pragmatic perspective, on what can only be described as a sort of like, they're committing like political seppuku every day. Like it's unbelievable the extent to which they constantly make the wrong decision for their own interests. And like, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying I love Andy Burnham or Andy Burnham should be Labour leader or whatever, but Andy Burnham certainly is somewhat popular in Manchester. He's certainly a bit more politically astute than Keir Starmer. He's better at speaking. People like him more. Doesn't necessarily mean he'd have won the by-election. Doesn't necessarily mean he'd win the next election as Labour leader. But like the way in which the Labour Party are completely shutting down even having him in the fold is indicative of like the overall problem, which is that they're like, no, anything that's popular has got to go. We only do unpopular things because we're the vegetables party. We're the party that gives everyone what they fucking hate, and we assume that will be a winning electoral strategy.
We're the vegetables party. That's it. They're constantly force feeding us broccoli, and we're the children. Also, you say he's more politically astute than Keir Starmer, Burnham. Nicer eyelashes, looks better in a bomber jacket. You know, there's... but these things matter in politics. It was kind of funny at the time because Keir Starmer's allies were sort of saying, no, it's the only thing he could have done. It's the only thing he could have done. You go, no, it's not the only thing he could have done. There's another world where you sort of man up and go, all right, yeah, no, Andy Burnham, I have no issues with Andy Burnham. Yeah, if he wants to, bring it on, right? And then kind of face it down. Like, do you want to do this to the party? It's almost like a reminder of how weak he is the fact that he just couldn't afford to have him in the party. It's almost like saying, I can't introduce this bloke to my wife because she'll definitely sleep with him. You go, well, no one has any respect for you now.
What most people think.
There's a Matt Goodwin. I've had questions about this Matt Goodwin guy ever since they picked him as the candidate, right?
I've had questions about him ever since he ate a book on television.
Did he do that?
Oh, do you not know about this? Oh, this is amazing. So Matt Goodwin, during the Brexit vote in 2016, he said, if Brexit wins, I will eat my book on live television. And then Brexit won. And you know what? I don't often say this, but fair play to Matt Goodwin. He went back on TV and ate his book.
What, like just the whole thing or just a bit of it?
I presume it was partial. But he did actually eat some pages out of his book on television. So
was he a Remainer?
Oh, I don't actually.
Or he just didn't think Brexit would win.
Certainly the latter, but I think quite possibly the former. He's one of those people who he used to be a centrist and has now become a kind of like right-wing grifter because it's a good source of income.
Well, listen, I don't know his motive, but then, you know, he does sort of sit in a space for me with Robert Jenrick, where Robert Jenrick was a good Remainer, you know, and has moved that way, you know, like Liz Truss. I suppose people's political views do change. I suppose it's the sort of speed and your sense of that person as well.
You feel like your political views don't change so much when you're a professional politician who's presumably had to think about this stuff for years in order to get into the position there. Ordinary people, sure, fine. You know, politics isn't your main occupation. But I think what was particularly funny about Jenrick was someone who spent like a good few years as housing minister under the Tories, then coming out and saying like the state of housing in the UK is a disgrace. And Reform are going to sort it out. And I'm like, sorry, mate, weren't you? It's like we're all looking for the guy who did this.
But I suppose then you as long as they do the mea culpa, like there's because everything's so short termist, you can just say like that was a long time ago. You know what he could do there? Like it'd be smart for politicians to do is to just give you a cultural reference points to show how long it was ago. To say that was like 3 hosts of The Apprentice You're Fired ago, and people go, fucking hell, that was a long time ago. That was, like I was like, because I was trying to tell my dog's really old at the moment, and like, she might be, on her way out, and I was getting upset about it, and I was sort of trying to rationalise it to myself, and I was thinking when we got her, David Cameron had only just become Prime Minister. I was like, fuck, I needed that cultural reference point. So maybe that's what these guys...
He only recently fucked a pig.
He never fucked a pig. I mean, God, that was left-wing fake news.
Well, I mean, it was fucking...
he made love to the pig.
It was Lord What's-His-Face who wrote the book, wasn't it? Was it Lord Ashcroft? Was that his name?
Isabel Oakeshott. Yeah, I'm not sure it's ever fully corroborated. I mean, the thing with Cameron, did he ever sue anybody? The problem is the Streisand effect, isn't it? Like, if you start suing, you have to go to court to say, I didn't fuck a pig. Yeah. It's best to just hope people will stop talking about it.
It's not something you want to have to do discovery on in a court, is it?
Yeah, do you know what I mean? Like, especially now, don't go to court for anything because the moment the WhatsApps come out, everyone loses. Matt Goodwin. So I've had doubts about him, it's fair to say, as a politician and a campaigner. But then some people on the left, there's this kind of anti-reform account tried to dox him by saying, right, this Matt Goodwin fella, just so a reminder that he got divorced recently. Oh, and this is his new girlfriend. And the new girlfriend's like really attractive and stuff like that. But I also thought, what's your fucking point here? Like, you have no idea what the process of his divorce was. Sometimes they take a long time, right? The marriage could have ended a while ago. And also using the sort of principle of the campaign film, saying, oh, look, he's got a really hot wife, might not necessarily work against him at all.
Yeah, sorry, has Matt Goodwin leaked this? Is he like, oh yeah, you know what would really piss me off would be if all the attack jobs on me were saying I've got a really hot wife.
Yeah, just I'd hate for this to get out because actually, like, he had that really embarrassing video come out of him with the loudhailer being very Partridge-esque. I would say that what he absolutely needed was for the public to go, you know what, nothing gives. I mean, it's really old fashioned, but a man with an attractive wife, it does change society's view. Even when Starmer debuted Vic, his wife, she had that brief little outing in the red dress, didn't she, for the campaign? Everyone was going, you know what? Fair play to him. I mean, it's really, you can't get around this shit. I think what's interesting about this by-election is not so much who wins, because that's the trajectory that they've almost suggested is inevitable, right? Greens, we're the new opposition. Reform, we're the new opposition. It's almost a battle to be the new opposition. Labour, you'd sort of think, it's about how people react to defeat. I think the Tories are nowhere in this. Labour would go, well, it's a by-election during a difficult time. It's kind of factored in. I think Greens and Reforms, it's going to be hard for them if they lose, because the whole argument is, oh, it's us now. They're probably going to have to be... it must be weird in politics, right? So I'm jumping about a bit here. But you must have to rehearse your defeat speech quite a lot, because if you don't win an Oscar, you just don't do a speech. But if you don't win an election, you have to do a fucking speech.
If you're a proper candidate, what you do is you get up there and you eat your book in front of the entire hustings. Yeah. That's the way to handle a defeat.
Also, but then you say, however, this is my bird.
Well, I think actually to say it's the battle to be the new opposition is maybe not quite correct, because I think that, I'm going to caveat this by saying that the next general election is a long way away, and like fucking a week is an incredibly long time in politics at the moment. But it seems to me that it's sort of like, well, one of them is going to be the new government and the other one is going to be the new opposition. Because if you look at the polling numbers, it's like Labour and the Tories are basically both completely fucked. Now, they're both like establishment enough and they've got enough history and enough money behind them that like maybe one or the other of them can turn it around by the time of the next election. I think it would be silly to completely rule that out. But the way it's going at the moment, I mean, the Labour Party, despite being in government, can't seem to fucking do anything, which doesn't really endear you to people. And like, the Greens and the Reform, they're both putting forward like visions of how things could be different. Now, I think that, the Green vision, disagree with it as you might, is one that's sort of grounded in some kind of like practical, okay, like, well, here's what we want to do about the various problems. The Reform one is mainly based around like, what if everyone was white again? But like, those are like kind of visions that appeal to certain segments of the voter base in a way that like the Labour vision of like, well, what if you got a tax credit every time you picked up a dog poo doesn't. You know what I mean?
It doesn't fit into, I know what you mean. They're not sort of simple black and white answers. I mean, a reform would say for them it's not about ethnicity. It's about, like Zia Yusuf has got this complex policy about not being able to build mosques where churches once were, which is kind of like, it's interesting, isn't it? Because there's an inference there about a sort of, so Restore Britain, I think, might go further to what you're saying. But I mean, if it is about ethnicity and Zia Yusuf is part of it, then that is quite a shout. All right, so we're going to talk now about the Baftas. So on Sunday night, the Baftas happen. There's the film Baftas, which is the more pretentious one, isn't it? The film one, where they just say, when I read his vision, shut up.
Yeah, it's like, why isn't Dean Gaffney there? Get Dean Gaffney out.
You know what I mean? You just suddenly realise why the National Soap Awards are better. But I don't ever want to hear actors talk about acting. When I read the script, the moment they say shit like that, what I want to hear about gossip. Do you know what I mean? On set. Do you know what I mean? Who was always hungover? No one cares about your fucking process, man.
Yeah. Did you watch the Baftas? Because I did, and I'll tell you what I was shocked by was because a lot of the people presenting the awards, who are mostly actors, they come out and do a bit of scripted banter. And the jokes are mostly really bad. But even when the jokes were good, like Warwick Davis, I thought whoever had written his jokes, the jokes were actually not that bad. But the delivery was fucking awful.
Well, they don't really look at it. So you get like for a show like that, and this is where I've got sort of skin in the game, which I'll come to. It's like, so there's the TV BAFTAs, which you tend to get like an out and out funny host who might have writers or they'll have sort of in-house people. And then for the film and TV film BAFTAs, they'll have like a very good writer, but will have to write very generic kind of non-controversial stuff. And a lot of the people, some of them will get really obsessive about it and want to rewrite everything and think they've got a funnier line, and some of them will literally just read it as it comes off on the fucking auto cue, which is why they often butcher the jokes. But so I've had personal connection. I sort of written twice for the sort of TV BAFTAs. And so this situation where a guy, a Tourette's activist, several times during the ceremony itself and the dinner afterwards, shouted out the N-word at one point while two black actors were on stage. I think one of them was Michael B. Jordan. I know the other guys.
And Delroy Lindo was the other guy.
Yeah. So really two high profile actors. And it was really interesting to me because, like, for one, as we've already discussed, is like there's been a reaction, online about how awful it was for the actors to have to experience that. I mean, I'm just gonna quote a couple of tweets here by some fairly large accounts, kind of like sort of black activist style accounts. So disgusting. I can't believe they had to stand there and take that. Tourette's isn't an excuse to be racist. I go, well, if you accept what Tourette's is, it's sort of an excuse for everything, isn't it? That's the point. I mean, that slightly seems to miss the point. Another account said, and this was like, I know this is social media, but these are tens of thousands of likes for these things. Calling the black men the N-word is racism. No one is denying that. If the guy has Tourette's and can't control the slurs, he should watch from a separate area, not in the main audience where black people are exposed to slurs. So if I'm not mistaken there, what she's sort of arguing for is kind of that one group should be segregated from the other, which I think historically is kind of difficult, isn't it? Like nobody is saying that wasn't a really fucking awful moment for everybody to navigate, right? Horrible. All the history of that word, to be on stage, but it really has opened up a fucking cultural can of worms.
Yeah, it really does feel like, I remember like back in the day on Twitter, people used to joke about, like a certain type of like kind of right-wing edgelord guy who would try and come up with some incredibly baroque hypothetical situation in which he should be allowed to say the N-word. And it feels like that somehow happened in real life, like against all of the odds, like, that guy was bitten by a radioactive spider and then it created this situation.
No, you're absolutely right. It's almost like lab designed difficult cultural moment. It's also, there's overlaps a little bit with Will Smith slapping Chris Rock, because one of the reasons they didn't react there is because in that era and that time, a black man being wrestled to the ground by security was a horrific optic. So it was almost like that one was designed, and this one was too. Sorry, I butted in there. You're about to say.
Well, I think that like I didn't, when I watched it, the version of it that I watched had been edited out, but then I saw a clip later, and I think actually, they reacted in a very classy way. They just kind of like gave it a second and then moved on. And I think, to be honest, probably the reason they did that is because they knew that there were a lot of people in Tourette's in the crowd, and they simply understood that like, it's better not to make an issue.
Yeah, they would have been briefed.
And so I think probably, actually, it's almost the way sort of so much hay is being made out of this is a bit like, it's just an unfortunate situation. There's two men who obviously shouldn't be subjected to a racial slur and would obviously prefer for that not to happen. There's also a man who obviously has a disability and therefore, he's doing it entirely involuntarily. It seems like they probably understood that. He obviously understood that. Like, it's just, and sort of, I think, it's like classic like internet echo chamber stuff where everyone wants it to mean whatever they want it to mean. But actually, in reality, it's just like, well, we live in a complex society of like competing rights and obligations. And like, sometimes you get one of these situations where you're like, oh yeah, that's really unfortunate. I'm actually not sure how we could prevent that in the future, because it is just two competing types of inclusivity that are equally valid.
What most people think.
So I'm going to sort of complicate this by being as honest as I can, right? So when I contributed jokes for a couple of years, on the first year, there was a guy in that year who had Tourette's. And so while the monologue was starting, the guy made some noises, which distract and threw the monologue off quite significantly. You know it is when you do comedy. Anything that interrupts in you hearing words can make it difficult. Now, I was kind of annoyed there, just a human reaction, just because I wanted the monologue to fly, for the whole project to be considered a success. But then I did start wondering, right, like it kind of like, but then, that wasn't as high stakes as this. But then you kind of wonder, right, everybody in that ceremony, and then the millions of people watching it fundamentally changes the thing for a lot of people. So I think it's a very difficult situation to be in, to say that there's something that people can't do, like you can't go to that because of that condition. I guess I just wonder if it was me, whether I'd go, if I had the Tourette's, maybe I'd go, maybe I'll sit this one out. Maybe like the jeopardy of this is so high that actually, I'll make my visibility. I mean, geez, if you want to bring it to public consciousness, you couldn't have found a better way, I guess. I'm not saying he did it deliberately at all. But yeah, the selfishness makes me think that, if it was me, I'd go, maybe that's one thing I don't have to do.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess if you're Tourette's, if you've got Tourette's, that's kind of every situation. So,
I'm not saying it's not unselfish of me, but yeah, and I totally am not in that situation. And listen, a couple of weeks ago, I've just realised I was talking about people with ADHD and anxiety getting queue jump at theme parks. So I'm going to get shit for this for Tourette's people. I'm just trying to be honest. This is what a lot of people will wonder encountering this story.
Well, if you've got anxiety, let's hope you weren't at the Baftas last night, because it's making me anxious just thinking about it. There's a certain, politics aside, there's a very English part of me that I think I would have absolutely cringed myself to death if I'd have been there at that moment. I think I would have quietly dissolved into the floor at the sheer crushing weight of the awkwardness of that. It's a very sort of Curb Your Enthusiasm type situation.
Yeah, the nature of it that's hard to get past is the way it crystallizes. Because, if you talk about, people talk about DEI, right? And they sometimes confuse all the different components of that, right? Diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is very much at the inclusion element of it. But, it kind of compromises one side of it, where people are sort of saying, well, yes, we want you to be included, but the sort of stakes that I give that word and the feelings that I have about racism are way more important than your inclusion. So it does get into, for want of a better word, a bit kind of victims Olympics. And I think you're absolutely right what you say. The podcast is called What Most People Think. I think you're right. Most people will be thinking, God, that was unfortunate. That was unfortunate.
Yeah.
The guy must have felt awful. But Jesus Christ, in terms of a scientifically designed awkward situation.
Well, I also think, actually, if I could add, like I haven't, I might be behind on this, but I haven't heard anything from either Michael B. Jordan or Delroy Lindo on the issue. So I wouldn't
say they didn't give a fuck, but they were just like, well, that was weird. We move on. Yeah.
And I think there's kind of probably a lot of people are, like I say, a lot of people who weren't involved are kind of like trying to make it about whatever political opinion they already have. And actually, I think probably people in the room were quite like aware of what was going on and kind of like, we're just like, yeah, this is an unfortunate situation.
That is a perfect what most people think reaction. You've basically said, don't listen to the nutters online. Most people would have just gone, that was a bit fucking weird. Let's move on. And we're going to move on. as I said before, Milo's making his debut today, so we're going to get a death story out of him. Hopefully, somebody would have put some echo on that, otherwise it would just sound weird. So I'll just do another one. A death story. So if you like just hearing what it feels like for a comedian to absolutely bomb at a gig, join the Patreon and you can hear what's coming up now. And for everybody else, it'll be the end of the show. I can safely say that the backstory to that death story by Milo was fascinating. All I'll say is that it happened in Russia, okay? And maybe some of you are thinking of Rocky IV, and I don't hate that reference, but if you want to know it and get it unpacked, it's a really interesting story. Go on Patreon only. Milo, thanks very much. That was a great debut, man. We'd love to have you back. Just remind us in Australia. So is the show has the tour got a title?
It's actually, the Australian tour is a greatest hits tour, which I've called a decade, as it's the last 10 years of stand-up. And that's coming to Perth, Melbourne, Canberra, Sydney, Newcastle and Brisbane. And Time for Questions, that's happening in London on Wednesday, which is the 25th. I'm also doing Glasgow International Comedy Festival on the 12th of March with a Work in Progress show. And there's a few other bits dotted around. It's all on my website, which is miloedwards.co.uk.
Which venue are you doing the Time for Questions at in London?
That's at Big Belly on the South Bank.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's a nice venue. I was wondering whether it's going to be one of those Ponzi ones, like the Comedy Custard or something like that.
Comedy Custard?
I think that actually was a night. Do you know what? Right, sorry.
Arch rivals with Comedy Rhubarb.
It was like that. It was a bit like that. So it was when kind of millennial style comedy was first becoming popular, because I was out of the old Jongleur circuit, right? So it was about 2012 and I did it. And it was just like, I was like finding out what millennials were for the first time. And like I did tolerably well. No. I was going on last. And Joel Dommett, who wasn't famous then, went on before me and fucking smashed it. And with a kind of style of nice comedy, I was like, what's going on here? He's being nice. Like, where are the victims? Where are the victims in this show? For comedy to work, someone's got to take a fucking slug in the bollocks. So yeah, I always remember that gig for being a wake-up call to me, like going, there's a new generation.
And ever since then, you've grown into the cuddly figure that we know and love today, Jeff.
Maybe it all started the counter reaction. I was like, well, I can't be nice. I'm going to have to go the other way. Listen, Milo, thanks very much. That was brilliant, man. Thanks for coming on What Most People Think. And with the by-election coming up later this week, there will undoubtedly be a breaking news on Friday.